There should be a class in high school called Public Storage 101. Most people have more stuff than they have room for, whether it's a box of high school yearbooks, papers they wrote in college, or in my case, hundreds of paintings in 3 different storage units. I live in a tiny, cramped, rent-controlled apartment with no air conditioning. Meanwhile, the art lives way better than I do in a huge, climate-controlled public storage facility. I have gone broke trying to save my inheritance. My late father's paintings. My father was born in 1899 in former Yugoslavia. My mother was Jewish, so I'm a Jugoslav. First generation in the States. During my father's 20s and 30s, he became one of the most prominent artists in Yugoslavia. In 1939, right before Hitler invaded, they escaped with some of the art, getting exit visas to attend the New York World's Fair. They settled in New York, and very soon his art hung with the greats: Renoir, Matisse, Picasso, Degas. When I was young, I loved going with my father to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. We'd spend hours walking through the museum, and he'd teach me about each artist, their paintings, and afterwards, we'd share a banana split right before dinner. We will not tell Mama. He used to love to paint my portrait, but I'd have to sit very still for long periods of time, 4 to 5 hours at a stretch. I couldn't move a muscle. He'd make thousands of tiny brush strokes with intense focus, looking at me, then back at the canvas, then looking at me, back at the canvas. I'd shift a little. Don't move! Child abuse. I just wanted to be a kid, off playing or singing. Not a chance. Anna, one day you will thank me for this. He'd hug me tight and say, Anna, no one will ever love you as much as I do. I know, Daddy, and I'd push off and run off. As a little girl, I loved to sing. I was obsessed. I'd sing along with everything: West Side Story, The Beatles, Peter, Paul and Mary, The Supremes, The Four Seasons, and Mozart's arias. One night, my father told me that the famous Metropolitan Opera singer, Zinka Milanov, was coming to our house for dinner. I was so excited. She came in, and she was obese. Huge breasts in front and in back, okay? Created by a large fold of massive flesh squeezed together, pouring over the top of her low-cut dress. My father bragged, Anna sings along with your arias in perfect pitch. She planted her gross, gargantuan self in front of me, like this, and said, oh yeah? Sing a decent note. Well, the note went on for much louder, longer, and higher than that, and better. And I tried to sing the same note. Not even close. I turned beet red, ashamed, terrified, heart pounding, and I looked over at my father, who was looking down, embarrassed and silent. The big, fat, famous opera singer humphed, victorious in her annihilation of a 9-year-old little girl. I was humiliated. I waited for my father to rescue me. He didn't say a word. He just looked away. I felt betrayed, so hurt and angry. In that moment, my father didn't protect me. He turned against me, so I turned against him. I refused to pose. I stopped going to museums with him and stopped singing altogether. He tried to reach out, but I'd reject him. Well, that grudge and resentment lasted through my tweens and teens, even forgetting why we'd grown apart. We lost each other. Now, in the 60s, the art world was going all Andy Warhol, and my pop didn't go pop. So he fell out of vogue. Financial difficulties hit my parents really hard in New York, and when I was 14, we relocated to Scottsdale, Arizona, where the president of a large bank commissioned my father to create large-scale murals of Native American scenes. Well, my father was putting the finishing touches, on a 26-foot-long mural of the buffalo hunt, 26 foot long, when he stepped backwards and he accidentally fell off the platform, hitting his head on the floor. My mother and I heard him cry out. We ran into the studio and helped him get up. Went to the doctor and he seemed okay. A few weeks later, the day before Thanksgiving, 1970, "Anna, I really don't feel well today." "Ah, Dad, you'll be all right." And I rushed out the door to a class at Arizona State. When I returned later that afternoon, my mother was pale. "Anna, your father is in a coma in the hospital. He had a stroke." I raced down to the ICU. He was just lying there. His eyes were closed. A horrible breathing machine was connected to his throat. Kukush, kukush. It was keeping him alive. I would hold his hands in mine and say, "Please, Daddy, please don't die." No response. 3 days. A few days later, he was gone. I never got to say goodbye. I lost all those years rejecting him since the Zinka moment. And I've lived a lifetime without him. But I have his art. So years later, after my mother died, my brother and I jointly inherited my father's art. Soon after, my brother's fiancée also tragically died, and he began to make some seriously bad life choices. Without my knowledge, he filed for bankruptcy, and our father's entire art collection would be auctioned to pay off his debt, including my half. I broke down. I'm going to lose the art. My father's gone. I can't lose the art. It means everything to me. Everything. Well, my boyfriend just happened to work for bankruptcy attorneys. So he helped me compose a heartfelt letter to the trustee. "Dear Mr. Trustee, no matter how valuable my father's art is or isn't to someone else, it is priceless to me." I went on to plead my case, and it worked. The trustee made a deal. I took responsibility for the huge debt, a lot of zeros, owed to a variety of public storage facilities, and he released the art into my possession. Now, I've had to sell a few paintings over the years, but it's never been enough to pay off the credit card debt or cover the ongoing public storage expenses. But through it all, becoming the guardian of my father's art has reunited us, in a way. Protecting his life work for the last 30 years is my way of honoring him. Well, many years after he died, I started singing again and writing music, but not opera. I'm older now and understand why he may have chosen not to talk to me about what happened that day with Zinka. It wasn't that he wouldn't defend me, it was because he couldn't. She was a client, and my father needed her business to support his family. I was 9. I didn't understand the idea of bills and rent. But when I think of all the years I blamed my father for losing my voice, when I was traumatized by that big bulbous bully, the truth is, I chose to stop singing. It took a while, but I found my voice, and I'm less broke. Some Saturdays, I roll up the door of one of the public storage units, and I spend the day just looking at the art. My favorite is the painting lesson. It's a painting of both of us, our reflection in the mirror. A captured moment of how close we used to be. And I'll sit there among the paintings and talk to my father, and I'll have the conversations we didn't get to have when he was alive. And every once in a while, he tells me what he wasn't able to tell me that day. Anna, samo piewaj! Anna, just sing!